Some bad guys pretend to be crazy. This guy really was, and he had an army to prove it. Hi, I'm Gordon Carroll, author of the best-selling Gil Mason Sheepdogs mystery thriller series. And I want to thank you for joining me today as I relate some of my old police canine stories. And remember, like this video, comment, and subscribe. That's what keeps us going on here, so thanks so much. So tonight's story is a little bit different. It's not actually a canine story, but it is a story about when I first started in police work way back in the day, close to 40 years ago. So when you started at the sheriff's office back then, you had to start in the jail, and then you could later try to get back out onto the road. But you start in the jail. So I worked in the jail for a year, and then while I was in there, I was one of 5 people that started a special unit called the Special Intervention Unit, or the SIU. And that particular job was dealing with people who were mentally unsound. So they were the most psychotic of the people that we had in the jail. We kept them in a special housing unit called the SIU unit, which was in the medical area. And their one side was straight concrete with 8 rooms that were what we called isolation rooms, or they were completely stripped of everything except for a mattress, a sink, a toilet that were a combination. And we had 2 rubber rooms in there that were hard rubber all the way around it, kind of like you see in the movies, only not as fluffy. You usually see in the movies where they're all padded, nice and soft. These were actually pretty hard, but it was rubber, so that people couldn't hurt themselves. And in those rooms, all there is a hole with a grate over it in the middle of the floor. Because those are the people that are really going crazy, or they're throwing poop, or they're peeing, or they're trying to get some kind of excrement on you. So we put them in there so that they can't hurt themselves or hurt anyone else. On the other side of that unit is the regular medical unit, where we have people that are recovering from surgeries or they have injuries of some other kind. But that side with the 8 rooms is reserved for just the most psychotic and most dangerous of the people that we had, and that's what the SIU was formed of. So while we were working in there, one of our first people that got brought into us was a guy from Wyoming that had murdered someone, and he was out in Deer Trail, and one of our street deputies came in contact with him and tried to stop to just talk to him to see what he was doing out there, because he didn't know. So he goes up to him, he's like, hey, set the backpack down. So this guy is like maybe 5'5", no more than 130 pounds, just really light and pretty petite actually for a guy. So he sets his backpack down, and the deputy says, I want to look through that backpack. And the guy turns around, starts to walk away. So the deputy says, hey, stop, I got to talk to you for a minute. So the guy turns around, and as soon as the deputy goes to apprehend him or put his hand on him because the guy's acting weird, as soon as he does that, the guy kicks him in the kneecap, dislocates his left knee. Just boom, that fast. So the deputy tries to grab him with the other arm, and boom, he kicks out his other knee, takes that knee out. So now the deputy's on the ground holding on to him. He's a pretty big guy, but both of his knees are totally incapacitated, and he's trying to keep hold of this guy. The guy just starts wailing on him. So it takes a few minutes before an Adams County deputy comes up and helps him, and together they're able to get him into custody, even with the deputy injured, who was out for months with 2 dislocated knees. But they were able to get him into custody, and they brought him in. When they brought him in, they were finally able to identify him through his fingerprints, and it turned out that he was a murder suspect out of Wyoming. So they put him in our jail. They tried to put him in general population, but he was really mentally unstable. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of people who said that they were crazy, but they were just faking. A lot of them aren't, but a lot of them, more than the other side, they are just faking. So, like for instance, the Joker from the Aurora Mall shootings. I was one of the first deputies on scene that night at the Aurora Mall shooting. When we all got the guy in custody, and we call him the Joker, and I don't want to give him any more fame by saying his name, but so we just call him the Joker. But we had him in the Arapahoe County Jail for the entire time waiting for his trial. And while he was waiting for that, he was under 24-hour surveillance, because there was a fear that he might kill himself, or that he'd try to escape, or somebody might try to kill him. So he was under 24-hour surveillance, where a deputy just sat in front of a monitor, and there was video in his room, and he was in solitary confinement down in the medical section, in that other section that I said wasn't for the crazy guys, but just for the other people. And all this deputy's job was to do was to watch him 24 hours a day. Well, you know, they would take shifts, but they would watch him continuously to make sure he didn't hurt himself. And it was interesting because he would act completely and totally normal all the time until he got to court, and then he was like, so, you know, it was just a big Tony Baloney act. In any case, this guy was the opposite of that. He was full-blown crazy, and he was scary crazy because he was pretty volatile at times. Well, one day when I was working in the SIU, I had not been there for maybe a week, and I came in and I took over, and I was going through doing my rounds, and I noticed that this guy was in his cell, and all he had in there was a mattress, 2 blankets, and then the toilet and the sink. And that was it. And the mattress is like about this thick, and it's specially coated to where they can't rip it open and hide stuff in it or do anything with anything on the inside. There's no springs, there's nothing like that. So he's in there, and on his bunk or on his mattress, I see that he's got like this army of Play-Doh guys. So they're like little tiny, not stick figures. Well, yeah, they're stick figures because they got arms and legs. You know, it's like you made it out of clay. And he's got like an entire army over here and an entire army over here, and he's like playing with them, doing all this kind of stuff. So I'm like, where did he get clay? He's not allowed to have clay. So I open the door and I go in. Turns out, poop net. They're all made out of his feces. He has taken his feces, let it dry to a certain consistency, and then he's made these people out of it as if they're clay, and he's having this huge war with them. And I'm like, you can't do that. And he's like, oh, I can. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna go pick it all up. So I did, we eventually pulled him out of the room, and we had trustees come in, or inmate workers, and we had them clean it all up. And it was just horrific, and it smelled terrible. But he would do this all the time, every time we take it out. And how do you stop a guy from doing that? You can't stop him from playing with his poop. I mean, you can end it eventually, but it takes time. Anyways, while I was interacting with him on different days, he would tell me weird things, like he'd say that his pineal gland was super enhanced and that he could talk to Arnold Schwarzenegger in California. And whenever he needed to, Arnold would send him his super muscular powers to do whatever he had to do with this pineal gland connection. And of course, I'm just like, yeah, right, whatever. So he stayed with us for 364 days. The reason I know it was 364 days is this: we will only hold an extradition for another state for up to 1 year. And it was exactly 1 day before his 1 year was going to be up, and we were going to have to let this guy go on the streets, which is insane. But you can't sit here and say, hey, Wyoming, we're going to foot the bill for this guy for 10 years for you until you decide to come and get him. So the judge ordered that the next day he would be released. So I'm sitting in there, and I get a call from him on the intercom to come talk to him. So I come to the door, and he says to me, he goes, they're coming for me today. I know it, and I'll be ready. I'm like, yeah, we haven't gotten any word, you know, I'm not going to tell him if we had anyways, but I said, yeah, we haven't got any word, so just don't worry about it. And he goes, well, I'm talking to Arnold. I'm getting ready. And I said, well, don't talk to Arnold, just keep it easy, don't do anything, you know. So my shift ended, and I went to get ready to leave, and as I'm leaving, I get a request into booking. They request me to come back to help them. So 2 of my buddies are there. One, and these guys are both huge. Now, this was back when I was in my, late 20s. I was about 220, worked out constantly all the time. And then my 2 guys that were there, called me down, they made me like a shrimp. I mean, one of them was like just hugely muscular, and the other one was tall, very powerful, like a football player. In fact, he used to play football. And they said, hey, we just got word that Wyoming's here to pick him up. They just got into booking, and they want to get him out of here. And I said, oh, well, okay, get him out of here. That's great. I'm shocked. And they're like, no. We know you have a special rapport with him because you can talk to him a lot and everything. And I said, yeah, I talk to him. We usually get along. I don't shake hands with him. But so I said, yeah, I'll go back and I'll see. They go, just trying to get him to come out quietly so we can get him in there. We don't want any muss or fuss. They're waiting to go, and we just want to go. I said, okay, I'll go talk to him. So we all 3 go in, and I go to the door, and he's laying on his mattress with the 2 blankets over him, and you can see just a little bit of bare skin of his arm, okay? Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you about this. When they first captured him a year ago, when he got into the fight with the deputy and they blew out that guy's both of his knees, he scraped his arm up, okay? It was his left arm, and it was like on his forearm. He scraped it up real bad. It was like real bad road rash. Well, it scabbed over, and it never healed. And the reason it never healed was periodically when I would go in to talk to him or somebody else would go in to talk to him, when you're talking to him, he had a nervous habit. And his nervous habit was he would pick at his scab and eat the scabs while he was talking to you. Blood would be running down his chin, and you had to sit there and just go, okay, and continue to talk to him. I'd tell him, hey, don't do that, man, don't do that. He's like, what? And he'd say, no, it's okay. It's okay. And he would just pick it away and eat the scabs right there while you're talking with blood running down. It was just horrible. But because of that, for an entire year, his scabs had not healed up. The nurses had bandaged it. He would take it off. As soon as it was scabbed up, and he'd start eating them again when he's talking to you. It was gross. But in any case, I could see from the blanket a little bit of his skin, and I could see part of that scab. So we knew he was in there, of course, and everybody else was locked down too. But I could see that skin, so I started talking to him. I'm like, hey, Mr. So-and-so. He started screaming. As soon as I said, hey, Mr. So-and-so, how are you doing? This is Gordon Carroll, and I just want to talk to you. And he says, they're here for me, I know it. And I'm like, yeah, they're here for you, you're right. I said, so we just want to do this nice and easy. Why don't you just come over here, come out, we'll take you down there. And we're talking through a closed door here, an electronic door. So he's like, no, they'll never take me. And I'm looking at my 2 buddies, and I'm like, so I said, well, open the door. So I had him open the door. So I'm like, good, come on, man, let's not make this hard. Let's just, you know me, I'll make sure nothing happens to you. We'll get you down there to them. And so he says, no, never. So I looked at the 2 guys next to me, and I said, okay, get it. That was my great skills of communication at the time. So all 3 of us jumped on him. We thought if we could get him really quick and get him secure, that would end it. So I grabbed his left arm. One of the other deputies grabbed his right arm, and then the really big guy that played football, he dropped on both of his calves, and he's like holding him down. So you've got a combined weight of 2, 4, 6, close to 700 pounds on this guy, who weighs 130 pounds soaking wet. And he's laying under these covers, and he starts just fighting and fighting. Well, as he fights, he reaches up and bam, he hits his arm, and that scab just breaks open and blood shoots everywhere. In fact, it shoots into the eyeball of the guy across from me. We didn't know it at the time, but turns out he was HIV positive. Luckily, the other deputy never did show signs, but it was scary at the time. But we didn't know that because the nurses back then were not allowed to tell us when somebody was HIV positive. Otherwise, we could have come in with more gear, protection, stuff like that. But in any case, splat right over into his eye. So I'm trying to hold on to him. Now it's all slippery and my hands are slipping around and everything. So as I'm holding him down, he reaches down, because I've got like one leg like this. He reaches down and he grabs the tip of my boot. And with his hand like this, and here's my boot, he grabs it and he rips it in half. He completely rips not from the sole, but he actually rips the entire boot in half off of my foot. And he's got it sitting in his hand. And I'm like, so I'm trying to hold his arm, and he's trying to lift it like this, and I'm shoving it down with all my weight. This is a 130-pound, not muscular, not on any drugs, because he's on nothing right now. But it's because he's crazy. And he's lifting the other guy that's on his legs, the football player. And I mean, he had to weigh at least 260. And he's lifting him off the ground with his legs, like calf raises. It's just crazy. And so we get him, we find him, and it literally took us probably 7 or 8 minutes to where we could finally get him in handcuffs. Once we got him in handcuffs, he just collapsed. He was just like, done. So we bring in a gurney, we throw him up in the gurney totally naked because he was stripped down. Throw him up in the gurney, put a blanket over him. We take him down, we give him to Wyoming, we go, you take him like that. So that's what we did. So it was the Poop Army friend of Arnold Schwarzenegger with the pineal gland of superpowers. That's the kind of stuff you get in a jail and in law enforcement. So thanks for joining me here. If you like this story, please listen in for others. Also check out my books. I'm the best-selling author of the Sheepdog series, and love to have you come along on the journey. Thanks so much.